my opinion.
Dungeon Doomhands.
All right.
Let's talk
encounters,
lore.
Chris.
A podcast.
Encounters, not just combat.
Right.
It's a broad topic.
What I was saying in our pre-video was encounters to me are sort of used as a way of ensuring, at least from a DM standpoint, player engagement. So you have any type of encounter. You have I guess there's like a big three. It's like you have your combat encounters, your non-combat encounters, which are like, observations and whatnot. Or there could be some sort of nature thing. And then maybe like the third one would have been more like a puzzle. Maybe those aren't the big three. To me, what are your? You got non-combat. And roleplay. Roleplay is the third one. Roleplay.
That's what I wanted to talk about. Not just the lore, but the idea of the encounter. I know this is one thing that we said in the pre-chat was my idea of encounter is just your interaction with the world. Of like your players come to an interaction with the world. It could be a combat. It could be a random person from your backstory being chased by some wolf or something, or be running from the law.
Right. And another type of encounter, when I was making the Artemisian Forest, and I was like, okay, I had spaces. I had 20 the way I designed it was I had 20 areas. And in those areas were going to be, I would say about 8 of them, I was like, there's going to be combat. I know my players, they want combat. There's going to be combat in almost half of them. However, the other areas are going to be built with either preset encounters or randomized. And I felt like, as a beginner DM, just preset them, not like just have it labeled out to do it. But as we get more comfortable, role playing and letting the players be in charge of moving the progress of the story forward, I would say more randomized. It's nuts. One of the times that I did that in the open water, remember, like recently there was like I don't know what it was that came out that made every single Dungeons and Dragons game on the water. But when I went to Comic-Con, everything was on a ship and on the water. There was no that's just what it was. But so I was looking online for all these random tables I could use, and one of the random ones was the Truman Show thing, where the ship randomly hits a wall, and a door opens and there's a dungeon, which was
perfect.
You said something earlier too. It's not about like a confrontation always.
Every encounter interaction, I feel, is like Schrodinger's cat, but with combat. It's like you come into the interaction, and if you've played enough games, or it's crazy with crazy enough people, you know that encounters that you would, as a DM, expect to be a strict combat encounter might turn out to be like a just RP and they come out as best friends, or one that you plan for everyone to get along, they end up fighting. So you don't know what's going to happen in the encounter, whether it's combat or not. So like planning, if you're going up against your big boss, of course that's going to be more than likely combat, but always being open to an encounter not going the way that you have planned.
Right. And also it doesn't have to necessarily be a fight. Right? Everyone likes confrontation, pushing the envelope.
Yeah.
But I think it's like, a good DM, not necessarily a good one, but a different style of DMing the encounter to make sure that it's not one where it ends in either an NPC that's dead, or because you just when you kill the NPC, you kill the encounter. But it could be that the NPC was a bad guy. But so the way I would frame an encounter, let's go back to the idea of an encounter.
Yes.
To me, the encounter has a specific goal, and it's not
take us on the list of all the goals.
Right. Oh, so yeah.
Awesome.
What are they?
Well, these were some goals that I were thinking of that an encounter might be of, like a plot hook, or some random part of your backstory, or it could be a merchant, or or a lore drop, or wandering monsters. It's like any goal that you can think of like something that you want to interact with the players in a way. Encounters are your way of interacting with the players and giving the players an opportunity to interact with you.
You're reading my mind, because what I was going to say to add to was, if you want to know what encounters to bring to the table, ask your players. Not, you don't necessarily have to say what encounter do you want, but know your play. You should know the players. By the time that you're done with the third or fourth session, you should pretty much know the guys enough to be able to. I know that certain people like lore drops. I know that a certain person likes loot. Another person likes a little mystery and little storytelling. Other people like, and if you have a person that is not as engaged in the story or the gameplay as much, maybe you throw in a little bit of his backstory.
Creating opportunities. Right. It's not necessarily forcing the storyline, but creating opportunities for people to jump in.
Engagements. It's pretty. It's like the is it spoken? It is the spoken rule for player engagement. You want someone to get engaged real quick? You have this like for us, we have this like massive epic saga going on, which we're 60 episodes deep and we're only a third of the way there. Yeah, but how do you keep players engaged? Well, you don't necessarily have to have a side quest, but maybe the encounter acts as that side quest to sort of bring you back in.
Well, one thing that is nice with the way the campaign that you have structured is each hero has like their little mini arc, and that's like predefined. Everyone knows like, all right, when we go to search for my color skull, we're gonna have my little mini arc that touches on some of my backstory, and kind of like how the blue skull was very much deep and delved into Sprock's backstory.
Right.
That idea of engagement of like, I know this whole arc is going to be about my backstory, so now's the time for me to jump in.
Now let's move on to like the type of encounters. It's like,
yeah,
and we're going to come back to this after our break, but as we said before, you have your. And I was reading one of these articles online for today's session. And one guy says, you have your non combat, you have your combat, and then you have your role play. But I think there's more. I think it's the non-combat one, to me, is a little bit more broad and a little bit. It's very vague. And one of the ones that I like to use is sometimes like you're in the forest and you guys just come across, for example, a wall. And then there were chains. And like, yes, there was a little bit of a puzzle, but like it sort of puts a stop in the progress of the campaign. Where it all come from, how put it there. It's sort of and with these encounters, you can create a little bit of a rhythm. So if you're doing like a one-off, maybe you have your boss fight at the end. Maybe you have a couple like different type of encounters set up. But they don't always have to be things that like lead to a certain end, because as we went through before, you have your goals. Sometimes the players just completely bypass those goals. You don't have to get through the encounter. The goal of the encounter doesn't have to be reached every time. Is what
exactly. Yeah. Well, that's why it's nice to have, especially if you're going into a little bit bigger of an area like the Artemision Forest or a city or a town. When I've DM'd, I always like to have a little table of something I can go to, and even just a table of ideas, a table of like, okay, there's this merchant, there's this whatever, or this merchant, this a beggar on the side of the street, or random list of people, or someone's backstory, or an inn, various things of like, okay, what is in town? You can read all those off, or someone say, I'm walking down the street, what do I see? All right, roll me a d4, see what you find, see what the first thing you see on the street is. You can have your predefined, beautiful like map all structured for distances, but if you're coming to that town for 1 or 2 sessions, oftentimes a short little table is enough to get you through what you need.
Oh yeah.
And even if it's just like, all right, you're coming into a little market, all right, what could be in the market? There's some kids. There's someone stealing food. There's a couple arguing. There's a security guard standing watch when you come in. There's very little food on all the carts.
Or there's nothing.
Or there's nothing. Yeah, and so it's like, okay, those are 4 random things. They don't all have to happen at the same time. You're like, okay, they can all be happening at the same time. Or you can say, all right, you come to this random market. What do we see here? What happens? And this is where it opens up for your world building.
And I want to say one last little point here. That maybe we'll do a little summary and move on to the next topic. But so also, it's not, as I beat this point to death. It's not always the DM. So a player can force that sort of encounter. And I did a Instagram post about this from the Artemisian Forest. If you're following along on that account, one of them is about how a silly little like trap where you come across, you trigger a trap, and the things come up and they shoot arrows at you. You dodge out of the way, and then you go and you investigate the trap. And you realize that there's dummies and stuff set up in there to make them look like they're different types of people. And you do these perception checks, and then it turns out that like you realize, well, wait, hold on one second. If they are traps, and now we know that the traps were made by the forest guard who are protecting the forest, what is beyond the trap that they are protecting? Yeah. So if you're a player, you can sort of force that encounter. Even you can change the. I feel like you can almost change the encounter sometimes. If it's just like a trap that you come across and you investigate it, you can. There's a story there that you can create. Mm-hmm. You don't have to have a table there to do that.
Absolutely.
Play type encounter. But why don't you?
Every encounter is a role play encounter. Combat, non-combat is an opportunity for role play.
So what would you say? Encounters in a few words, and then we'll move on.
Encounters is a lot broader of a topic than a lot of us allow.
But I think that the encounters also are like, not to be cliche or anything, but I feel like they are the heartbeat of this thing, because it's really personal how the players handle each particular type of encounter. Because as we said before, the combat encounters and the players that like combat are going to love those. But the people who like the non-combat encounters, which I like, but that might be just because I'm a DM and I hate rolling for combat all the time.
Combat as a DM can be intense.
That's for like our overarching theme of this Let's Talk lore that's been going on recently of world building. The non-combat counters. If you're not very good at role playing and you can't really open up the world through role play in the interactive NPC encounters, the non-player encounters are really where the world can explode a little bit, which is pretty cool.
It's a place to explore as a player. It's a place to explore your character, and as a DM, it's a place to challenge your players.
That's a perfect place to end, I think, this topic, or at least the introduction to encounters. So we'll take a quick break. When we come back, we're gonna build a
couple tables for Trigard
City. All right, this is gonna be intense. All right, we'll be back in a couple minutes.
This is Rena. Rena rolled low during death saves and didn't get healed by his group. Don't be a Rena. Roll high and subscribe.